Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel. If you could take a moment to do that, I would really appreciate it. I just ask that you do what you can to help out and partner with me rather than get sponsors and try to sell you a bunch of stuff that you don't need. I really don't want to sell you anything. I ask that if you like the information, please let me know that by supporting the channel today. Follow the link below to take you to a secured site. And you can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. If you could take a moment to do that, I would really appreciate it. I thank you for your consideration for that. Some bottoming signals on Nasdaq. Now, I don't have the little bullish buy signal like I got with the Bitcoin daily chart. Got back-to-back bullish signals with the bottoming tail and then the confirmation bar, and then I got more signals. But look, we have this represents momentum, and it's telling us, hey, you've got a bottom here potentially, kind of like what we had back over here when we talked about that December high. But you're now getting another. Today, just above the 200, and now tagging the 200, you're getting it. We're getting the little green circle here saying a bottom could be developing. This could start moving now, but now we're seeing it show up. And if it stops here, as it did with Bitcoin, it could mark a bottom. And then we're getting a little X, hard to see there, but we had one here and I got another one here. The B is kind of covering it up. But I'm getting these little bottoming signals here at this 200 period moving average for Nasdaq, and we're getting it now with the S&P 500. So we'll see if we start getting more bullish signals, and we'll see what happens. We got the bullish signal here after we got a higher low, and we started seeing these rallies, and eventually that took us to the new high. You see something like that again here. Momentum, we're very oversold. And now we're seeing these bullish signals on the S&P 500. You're getting this potential momentum shift right here. That's what the B is standing for. It's telling us, hey, momentum could be shifting. Show up at every bottom, but it's showing up here. And we got the little red circle today, just like at the Nasdaq, and a little X there overlapping it. Again, our momentum line is still bearish. Momentum is still bearish. We still have a bearish reversal of conditions, but could we see bottom begin to try to carve out here, get more positive news around tariffs? Now quickly, I just want to continue to point out, at our 200 period, you have major horizontal support here back from the October low and back from the November low. The October low here, the pullback here, and then going higher to continue the rally. We pull back here again. And again, this is where you have support. We were just above this area at the January low. So there's a confluence of support here surrounding the 200 period moving average. Do we get a bounce? The VIX is predicting that we get a bounce or bottom, and we got that rally today. The VIX was correct, and it could be a bottom. I continue to point out my signals remain bearish. The momentum line's bearish for the S&P. You've got a bearish reversal of conditions here for momentum, but we're hitting the 200 period. Wouldn't be surprised to see some green awesome oscillator bars. We're getting that with today's session. Bitcoin is rallying up 3.75% at the moment, and it's getting the green bar. The S&P is probably going to follow suit, but there's more work to be done. If we're going to turn this around, we've got to flip the cloud here back from red to green. We got to flip the bars from red back to blue. We're about to get a bearish alignment of the moving averages. Well, last time we had that, we were trying to bottom shortly after that. Here we could be trying to bottom just before that. If we can flip momentum around. If we can flip momentum around, then again, everybody's going to be saying head and shoulders, head and shoulders. I still think it's very likely that we go to new highs. Watching for a green awesome oscillator bar. If you have an awesome oscillator, you can see the same thing surrounding the awesome oscillator here on the S&P 500. Again, we still have red bars here going on. Still have a red cloud. We got to flip that around if we're going to try to go and rebound. That Nasdaq may end up diverging with S&P before all is said and done. We'll be watching. It did move to new high here. We'll see if it can resume the advance. Okay, the stock market was up. The market down, and the Dow had a big rebound back up nearly 500 points after being down sharply. Down 485 points, up 1.14%. The S&P rose by more than 1%, 1.12% up 64.5 points to 58.43, rounding up. The Nasdaq was up nearly 1.5%, 1.46%, and the Russell was up just over 1%. The VIX, which has been predicting a bounce or a bottom, the VIX was down 6.72%. Futures had tried to rally, gave it back, went back, and we talked about testing the low. The S&P and Nasdaq tested the lows, and then we got the rebound back up. Again, we got President Trump throwing the stock market a bone. I told you this was coming in yesterday's video. Yesterday, after the market closed, the Commerce Secretary said we could see a reduction in tariffs, and that, in fact, did happen. Wall Street's now rallying on hopes of further concessions or a possible deal. The president and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke. The president of Mexico is supposed to speak to Trump on Thursday, so there's hope that there's going to be some kind of deal. Again, the whole narrative being floated out there about tariffs by the media is wrong. Oh, the United States wants to impose tariffs so we can have tariffs. They want to impose tariffs so they can remove other tariffs and create free trade. That's why the tariffs are being put in place. If it does its job and we see tariffs in other countries removed, then again, we may not see a trade war. Again, the media continues to try to convince us that there's this trade war going on. And again, every time we see these tariffs start up, we end up seeing a pause, a delay. There's no trade war going on. Likely see negotiations with this, and again, something's going to happen to give the market a big rally. I told you, signals are really showing the market is very oversold, and again, sentiment is very bearish. Been at levels of extreme fear. That's what bottoms are made of. So Trump is saying now, throwing Wall Street a bone, saying that, hey, delayed and paused the tariffs on automakers after speaking to the CEOs. We get this rally once that's announced today. But Trump's also saying, the White House is saying they're open to further concessions. They're open to negotiating things with Canada and Mexico. So again, there's hope that this is going to be paused or delayed or maybe not happen, or maybe they come to some agreement. Indicators suggest that we're going to get this rebound, as I said, off of the 200 period moving average or surrounding it here. Wall Street's hopeful of further hopes of for Trump tariff concessions, or hope that some kind of deal is reached, or even another pause. We'll see what happens. Wall Street applauding that Trump pauses auto tariffs. See if we get more concessions or a deal. And again, leaders of Canada and Mexico are continuing to be in talks. Now, before I go into the economic data here real fast, just want to apologize. I didn't get a chance to post anything today on social media. I'm feeling very good today. I had to make a couple of videos on Bitcoin and the stock market, so I needed all the energy that I could that I could get. I wasn't feeling very good, so I just took that time to rest and making the videos here. So I'll post my videos later today and then post more tomorrow. The private payrolls, the ADP employment, and it came in less than expected. It came in 77,000. It was supposed to be 148,000, and previously we had 186,000. We'll be watching the jobs report come Friday. We're going to get that. We're going to get Jerome Powell speaking on Friday during the market session, and there'll be the White House Crypto Summit. I think Bitcoin's bottoming and, again, rallying up. The stock market is likely going to follow Bitcoin. Big rally going on with Bitcoin. The jobs report on Friday is supposed to come in at 170,000, previously 143,000. We'll be watching that. The unemployment rate is supposed to hold steady at 4%. And then at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we have Fed Chair Powell speaking. So the jobs report and Fed Chair Powell could be a market mover. We're going to rally back up. You know, we're getting this uptick with inflation. Here's the CPI. The CPI has risen back up here to 3%. Get another report here on March 12th, later on April 10th, the following month in April. The things that I told you that were going to happen, that the inflation was going to start ticking higher and that we are going to start seeing weakness with the economy, seeing that. And we're seeing inflation tick up. We're seeing concerns now in the labor market. Get another jobs report come this Friday. Had the first quarter of 2025 come in estimated with negative GDP. Currently, it was at 1.5%. Now it's at negative 2.8%. And again, it's going to change as we move towards the end of March. The quarter will end, and then we'll get that data at the end of April. Market going to shrug these things off, go rally, and then we'll see the sell-off, concerns about inflation, concerns about a weakening economy, and complete the blow-off top. Had the hurting of the yield for a second time. Said usually is what happens is you get that right before the recession hits, but you go and you make your new highs. That's what we did in 2007. Complete the topping process. That's why I still think we're going to new highs. I continue to warn. Now, on Monday, the VIX had a move of greater than 10% higher. It was predicting we would get a bounce or a bottom the next two trading sessions. Well, we had that today, so that is either a bottom or a bounce. I think you got a good shot that it's a bottom. The VIX, the following day, went higher. We gapped down. S&P 500 went to that 200 period moving average. So again, the rally today, the VIX was predicting, I talked about it at the time, VIX was predicting a bounce or bottom. So again, are we now getting a bottom? On the historical data, there was an 85% chance that we would have a rally in the next two trading sessions, but as I told you, we can go lower first, which we did. Got this topping tail on the VIX, this shooting star candlestick. So now, again, could we get a big bounce off of the 200 period moving average? Bitcoin rallied after dropping below the 200, just like Nasdaq did. S&P went down and tested it. And again, I'm talking about Bitcoin because if you want to see the roadmap of where the market's likely going, look at Bitcoin. The market is following Bitcoin once again. A short period of decoupling, which they do from time to time. Both S&P and Bitcoin, they both had the head and shoulders over here. They both went up and made a new high. First, the S&P went and made another high. Just after that, there was a short period of decoupling, and then the S&P followed Bitcoin down to the 200 period moving average. Took out the January low. Didn't have to. Bitcoin could have did it. It has more volatility. Bitcoin's rallying up right now 3.5%. Bitcoin tagged that 200 period moving average, bounced off of. We got the big rally surrounding the announcement of the crypto strategic reserves, and we sold off and we got a higher low. I think again, while I was not correct on calling the low there at the CPI gap, I told you I thought we might see that low hold because of the 78.6 Fibonacci right there. It broke and we took out the January low. So far, my call on Bitcoin that very same day is holding, and we got a higher low, and I think Bitcoin has likely bottomed. So I think that is going to be correct. But the S&P and Nasdaq are following Bitcoin. Bitcoin pulled back. It now got a higher low, testing the 200 again, and now we got that big reversal yesterday at the 200 period. Getting another bottoming tail, just like we had over here. We had this bottoming tail here. Now we've got a hammer, and now that's being confirmed, or it looks like it's going to be confirmed. Bitcoin doesn't close out trading until a few hours after the market because it trades around the clock. But I think Bitcoin's going to head towards the trend line, eventually break it. I think the S&P is going to head back towards its resistance. Again, we very well may have seen the VIX correctly predict a bottom with our signal that we got on Monday of that move on the VIX greater than 10%, predicting that we would get a bottom or a bounce in the next two trading sessions. Big Bitcoin's in wave 2. It's now going into wave 3. And if it is, then we should see the market eventually follow suit. We may have some more volatility with Powell or the jobs report if we rally up and then pull back. We can see more concessions with the tariffs or some kind of agreement or whatever the deal may be. Pause. Again, the market and Bitcoin can rally big time. Showing you this, Bitcoin's not your thing, that's okay. You need to know this because, again, most people don't. Bitcoin has a positive correlation with the market, and sometimes Bitcoin follows the market, and other times the market follows Bitcoin. Now we've gone to a place where the market is now following Bitcoin back to the 200 period moving average. Bitcoin's trying to form a bottom and rebound there. I'm getting all kinds of bullish bottoming signals on Bitcoin. We're likely about to see the same thing for the S&P 500. The MACD is going to roll up. Stochastics pausing here a little bit, I think you're going to end up seeing it move above this 50 area, and I think you'll eventually move above this peak right here. The S&P follow Bitcoin? Could the Nasdaq follow Bitcoin? I think so. Both the S&P and Bitcoin will make new highs. Nasdaq, the jury is still out on that. We'll be watching what happens with NVIDIA. Nasdaq follows NVIDIA very, very closely. Now, I told you yesterday, it is possible that we get a bottom surrounding this 200 period just above it, or again, we could test it and go back below it. But again, we tested it again today and we got a higher low. Again, it's very, very possible the VIX is calling for a bottom now, our 200 period moving average. Now, we may come back and get a higher low later. Bitcoin did, but we could see a rally on any positive tariff news. And again, I know it sounds a little absurd to say that, but that's what we got today. We got good tariff news. We got this rally. Will there be other concessions? Wall Street is hopeful. And I told you, again, the amount of negativity and fear and bearish sentiment here is just over the top, and you're likely forming a bottom. We are at key horizontal support. I showed you that yesterday. I'll try to show you again today, but we're trying to bounce in this area. And it's still possible we flirt with this area, but again, I think there's a very good shot that we have a bottom here based on the bullish divergences that we have on the 60-minute charts. We have really what looks to be a Class B divergence right here where price went lower, but you have almost these two equal lows on the RSI. Bitcoin got a very similar divergence to that at its bottom at the 200 period moving average, or a little tiny divergence like that. The failed breakout, which we talked about at great length of detail back up at the top, and again, I told you about the divergences up here. We failed to really get above that January high. One point above it here, not convincing. So this bar was really the breakout bar, and it never really got confirmed, and we reversed. And we talked about that at great length of detail. We had the divergences back on the 19th. I told you about the divergences right there, that we were going to get some kind of sell-off, and we did. I thought we were going back to the trend line for a test. We broke it. I thought we'd test that CPI gap, still get a higher low. I was wrong about getting a higher low. We did sell off as I thought. We did top as I thought, but we went lower than I thought and took out that January low here. But again, we didn't close. And let me just draw that straight. We did not close below it. And we're at key support in our 200 period moving average here. So again, just directly above, we had that gap fill area right here. This is where I thought we would get a higher low, and our 78.6 Fibonacci. And we had the trend line just above that, which broke. But down here, we had the trend line with our linear scaling. That also broke. Now, trend lines can change, but I do think we're going to establish a bottom. We rally back up. A lot of people are going to say counter trend, counter trend, counter trend. Head and shoulders pattern, head and shoulders pattern, head and shoulders pattern. And we're going to hear that again, that's it. And I doubt it because, again, we just had the inverting of the yield curve again. So I think this goes on a little bit longer. Yeah, we're getting the bad news. And everything I told you is happening. We're getting the bad GDP estimate. We're getting starting to see some weakness with the jobs report in the labor market. We're seeing the inflation begin to tick back up. Everything I told you that we were told, there's no way that's going to happen. It's happening. But the market is likely going to shrug it off. Why? Hopes of concessions on tariffs, hopes of another pause, a deal, whatever, and even the tariffs coming on Europe. Wall Street's still hopeful. I heard you about all this tariff stuff long before Trump was ever sworn in. You're going to get an inflation scare. I think you're going to get a scare about a weakening economic data when we rally up. But you're going to hear, okay, we're going to get this head and shoulders pattern. My guess is we're going to go up and make one more high. People here that think, oh, no, the top's in. So some people are thinking that now. And when they're ending up having to cover short positions up at higher levels, when we start taking this level out, we're going to go higher, and then everybody's going to get very, very complacent. They said it was a head and shoulders back over here, and I told you it wasn't. Again, that we had a bull flag developing. It did take us to a new high. The bull flag did set up. But here, again, you're going to be hearing that when we begin to rally big time, again, hey, we may do what Bitcoin did, rally up and come back and get a higher low, or test the 200 if we can hold above it here, which I think is likely. We'll be hearing about this head and shoulders pattern On you, because I'm seeing it before it ever forms, likely going to get before completing here. We'll get this first wave up, we'll get this pullback, and then we'll go up and break up through this level, and we'll move towards the resistance levels I've talked about. But when we begin to go up and we begin to pull back, get the second wave, which you're going to get these 5 subwaves into microwave 5, or I'm sorry, minor wave 5. I think wave 4 is likely completing here. Then I think you're going to have everybody going see, and then boom, we're going to get this big rally up. So again, I do think a bottom is likely developing. Looks like I'm going to be right about the Bitcoin bottom, but the S&P bottom, we did go beyond that January low and took out my trend line and moved beyond the 78.6 Fibonacci. So watching this closely, and again, CD's negative, stochastics variable. So if we start to recycle back up and we can carve out a bottom here, then we'll be watching to see what happens. You have really 2 scenarios left in play. I talked about back up the peak in late February there. I talked about the different scenarios that were in play. My other counts were invalidated. This is what I think is likely going on, that we completed intermediate wave 4 here. We have this 1, 2, and then this whole thing was 3, and this is 3, and we're now getting final wave 4, and you're going to get 5. 3 could have completed over here, but it would have been really big compared to the wave 2, and I don't think that is likely the case. I think this is a better fit where you have this whole thing being 3, then you're getting 4, and then we're about to get 5. So that's what I think is likely the case. But originally I had marked it like this, where we have 1, 2, 3, A, B, C for 4, and that's still possible, but I think the other count is more likely. I told you yesterday, I think there's a very good chance that we had a bottom testing that 200. Nasdaq dropped below it. It did the same thing Bitcoin did. I told you I think there's a very good chance that we have that bottom. I told you if we broke the trend line from 2023, which we did, and we dropped down and moved beyond the gap fill and the CPI gap fill and the 78.6 Fibonacci to take out the January low, we're likely going to bottom surrounding that 200 period, which we did a few days later. Today, we tested those lows. We went up off of the lows from yesterday. We rallied up to the 200 period here on the 5-minute chart, and we pulled back. We got our higher low today. This is a bottom now. Again, we could be having these smaller, wave 1, wave 2, and we could be starting this wave 3 higher. Smaller waves, possibly our first subwave higher for minor wave 5. About maybe going back and testing the 200 again. Maybe we just did that here. Bitcoin already did it the previous day. Bitcoin already did it and tested the 200 and got a bottoming tail and rallied up. We got that reversal bar today on the S&P. So maybe that's it, and we're following Bitcoin immediately and going back for another test. So again, just keep that in mind. That's why I keep showing you Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a roadmap, man. I want to know what the market's going to do, watch Bitcoin. But look at what happened. We had the pullback, we got back up, and look what happened. Peak, a stinking boo. We got the 50 back above the 200. So even if we drop back below it, it's likely we're going to go higher, and we're building momentum now to clear this level. So again, do we get some kind of deal reached with Canada and Mexico? In the United States? Do we get more concessions? Do we see another pause? Whatever the case may be, however it may work out. Again, I keep telling you, something's about to happen. And we've now seen something happen. Trump threw Wall Street a bone today, pausing the auto tariffs for a month. We're likely going to get more. The White House is saying we're probably going to get more. We still have the tariffs, but there's other exemptions from the tariffs, other industries, or a reduction with the tariffs or certain tariffs, anything. So again, we could see, even if we have the tariffs remain, we could still see Wall Street rally on good tariff news if we get some of these things happening. Further concessions, a reduction, their exemptions, or maybe some kind of deal hammered out. And it was hammered out very quickly, and we could see more concessions out of Canada and out of Mexico. Keep that in mind. If we see that happen, what do you think Wall Street's going to do? What do you think the stock market's going to do? It's going to soar. A bunch of short covering. Yeah, I'm looking for a top. I believe we're in a topping process, but I don't think the blow-off top is done yet. Again, this is suggesting to me that we're going to try to go. Now, last time we got it, going to bounce off of that trend line, 2023 low, and it failed. And then we had that sell-off. That was over here. That was over here. We were trying to fill the gap, the CPI gap, and at the 58.43 area, and tried to up the 78.6 Fibonacci. And that's when we failed right here. And it was a prior bounce that we had that off of that trend line. So again, so we're getting this higher low. Do we get this higher high now? And again, with the 50 crossing above the 200 here in the 5-minute time frame, we've got the bullish divergences going on in the 60-minute time frame, in the 30-minute time frame. Back on the 19th, that we had bearish divergences on the 15-minute chart, on the 30-minute chart, on the 60-minute chart. Went up to that trend line on the S&P 500 from the previous peaks, and we stalled there, getting this negative divergence. I told you we were likely going to sell off. And if we sold off, I told you watch the 2023 trend line. I told you to watch that gap, that CPI gap fill at the 78.6 Fibonacci. And if that didn't hold, watch the 200 period moving average. Thought we'd reach the trend line or fill area and get a higher low. I was wrong about that. We went lower, but look at the divergences that are now forming. You're forming multiple point divergences. One over here, you got another one over here, and then you've got another one now, another one right in here, multiple point divergences, and now we have a higher low. Do we now move to get a higher high? And again, you got the 50 getting back above the 200 on the 5-minute chart. Here on the 30-minute chart, we're rising back up towards this trend line. I think that Bitcoin is going to clear its trend line. Showed you on that daily chart, and I think the S&P will attempt to clear this trend line as well. And then I think is what will go happen is we'll come up here and we'll end up getting some kind of pullback in all likelihood. But again, could we be starting a 5-leg push higher here, and we have these smaller waves in our first subwave? Do we have this, this 1, 2, and now we're going to get this big move on 3? And again, White House announces that tariffs are paused. What in the world do you think is going to happen in the stock market? It's going to soar. There's more concessions, hopes of some kind of deal or a pause or, reduction in tariffs or whatnot. But they very well could come to an agreement. There could be another pause been talking about. So again, I think that we're going to take out this trend line. End up getting back above our 50-period moving average. We've been stalling at it. We've been stalling at the 50 period here on the 30-minute chart. But you got these bullish divergences as we had the bearish divergence back up at the top. And again, got it on the 60-minute chart. I talked about this again, told you that if didn't find support right here at the CPI gap fill in the 78.6 Fibonacci, that again, the risk is we go down to that 200 period moving average and take out the January low. But I told you we would end up getting another reference point of a divergence. We've got the divergence right here at the 78.6 Fibonacci. We now have another reference point, so it's likely done. So you've got this divergence, and Bitcoin did the exact same thing on its 4-hour chart, which is almost equivalent to the 60-minute chart. I bet the Bitcoin ETF, it looks just like the S&P 500. See it, go watch my Bitcoin video. I'll link it at the end of this one, my latest Bitcoin video. But look at the divergences. Again, the divergences, the bearish ones have given us a sell-off. The bullish ones have given us the rebound. But the bottom over here, we had a multiple point divergence. That's what we have now. It was a little more spread out over here, but we have a multiple point divergence. So again, that multiple point divergences usually lead to a reversal. So again, this divergence tipped us off to the top at that trend line, which we talked about at the time. Got the sell-off right, but we did go lower than I thought. Signals continue to be bearish. I think they're going to end up flipping back to bullish. We're going to bust up through this trend line, and I think Bitcoin's going to bust up through it. Here on the 60-minute time frame, you've got the 50 crossing the 200. I think you'll end up getting back above the 50, and maybe we clear this area, and then we come back and throw back to it, or get a Fibonacci retracement or something. But again, could we have the beginning of our smaller, our microwaves going on here in our first subwave for minor wave 5? I think so. I think that minor wave 4 very well be done. And as I've said, I'm looking for a bottom. We didn't get it here, a little bit higher there at the 58.43 CPI gap fill. I think you're getting it around the 200 period moving average. You're getting some bottoming tails here in the 60-minute time frame, just as Bitcoin did on its 4-hour chart. So I think these divergences will play out. We'll get a big rally, telling us No, there's no way. Again, you're going to see this move up. And then with the same people telling us we're not going to have the rally, we're going to get a rally up here towards the 200 period. And they're going to go head and shoulders, head and shoulders, head and shoulders. Now, the bears are telling us, no way, we're going back up. Okay, and my signals, I'm telling you, the herd is so bearish, it's bullish. Looking for a bottom. Now, did we go a little bit lower than I thought? Yeah, but not much. And we're at the level where I told you that if we did break the January low, I told you to be watching that. We just breached this January low just a little bit and then couldn't close below it. The herd bears are telling us right now there's no way we're going back up. And I'm telling you, we're going to go back up. Very, very oversold. And when we do, the same people telling us that we're not going back up, then they're going to start screaming head and shoulders, head and shoulders. That's what's going to happen, okay? So I'm just telling you, warning you, before it ever happens, that's what's going to happen. Think we're still going to new highs? Yes. Think we're going to pull back? Yes. Expect a sell-off? Yes. Did we go lower than I thought? Yeah. But I always have the guts to tell you what I think. Very few people will do that. I think we have a bottom here. Wrong. I was wrong up here about that. I was right about other things. I was right about these other tops that formed over here and here. I was right about the bottom here. I was right about, if we can go back further, I've made some amazing calls. I'm human. I'm not going to make, have every call be correct, but signals are still correct. My signals have remained bearish. I just told you, I thought we tried to bottom right here and get a higher low. I told you that before. This area, again, the trend line, 2023 trend line, or this area. Yes, I do think we're trying to bottom. This trend line's got to break. We got to see a rebound back above the 50 period here. We're going to follow Bitcoin higher with these bullish divergences. The MACD did not form a divergence. It got a bullish cross. It did go lower. We did have that bullish divergence on Nasdaq. MACD in the 60-minute time frame. Bullish divergence on the stochastic and other indicators. We got a bullish divergence there. This is very similar to what we saw in Bitcoin. RSI looks identical. Again, you had this little divergence here, then another one. So again, you've got this multiple point divergence, and that's what we saw on Bitcoin. Had that test, and Nasdaq was up today. So was the S&P. Again, the VIX correctly predicted that. We tested our 200 period. We got this candle of indecision in the form of a spinning top, and then we rallied. We tested our 200 again, just as Bitcoin did. S&P got a higher low. Did Nasdaq, but Nasdaq dipped below the 200. S&P didn't quite tag it yesterday, and it didn't tag it again today. Not tag it. But again, we've had this sell-off. We've had a failed breakout above the December high. I talked about that back up at the top in February 19th. We're going to get a sell-off at those divergences, and then we had one right here and right here. But now trying to bounce off of the 200 period as we have bullish divergences forming on our 60-minute charts, on our 30-minute charts. So again, we're going to be watching to see what happens. Now, we can bounce surrounding these 200 periods. You got a good shot that we have a bottom in, and again, we'll see what happens with the Nasdaq. I keep saying S&P may go to a new high, but Nasdaq may not be able to. Sometimes they diverge. Nasdaq did make a new high right here, so did the S&P 500, but we'll be watching the Nasdaq closely. Nasdaq also got a little tiny divergence on the RSI. RSI made a higher low, and we moved to a lower low. You got a little tiny divergence. S&P got a little Class B divergence where you had almost two equal lows. We had this gap fill from the election. We never did fill that gap. We have now done it at 20,227. This is the area that I told you to be watching because we couldn't bounce off of this trend line. So we'll be watching to see what happens here surrounding our 200 period. We filled this gap over here from the CPI. We have now filled the gap here from the election. Nasdaq hitting that 200 period has this channel, and we tried to slightly push above that channel today at the end of the session. We've got this bullish divergence going on here. You've got it. The MACD didn't get one. The S&P's MACD went lower. Got a higher low here on the Nasdaq, and so you've got that divergence there as well with the previous low. So again, you've got these divergences. They're likely going to play out, get us back above these 50-period moving averages, and then we'll be watching. Can we go back up here and test the 200 in the cloud and eventually try to get back above these levels? We'll be watching. Probably going to see a massive short squeeze here very, very soon, and it's likely going to be surrounding the tariffs with sentiment so negative, so much fear. This is what bottoms are made of.